Hello, my name is Justin, and today I will be talking to you about planning for an emergency. California sees many kinds of natural and technological hazards that are a cause for concern nationwide, as well as unique to the state. Finding hazards near you may be crucial to your safety and can have lasting effects on your health and lifestyle. By pointing out many guides and policies from national, state, and local organizations and agencies, you can find out what hazards are exactly near you. For example, the top 5 hazards in California are earthquakes, wildfires, drought, nuclear accidents, and terrorism. Earthquakes can be sudden and violent, depending on the magnitude and proximity to the epicenter. Scientists have tried to include technology to try to best predict when earthquakes may occur, but with the amount of earthquakes that occur each year, hundreds of them, many are barely perceptible. Though many earthquakes in the past have been destructive, many counties and cities have updated their building codes to be able to withstand even the largest earthquakes. In 2018, the city of Los Angeles passed 2 bills that would update the building codes to make buildings tougher in the state so that when an earthquake occurs, even when damage has occurred, the buildings are still usable. Another hazard that is spread across the entire state of California is wildfires. Wildfires are devastating to the environment because they not only destroy land, they destroy properties and lives. The wildfires this season have been the most destructive in history and have emitted more smoke and pollution in the air than ever before. This affects about 20 million people, or 95% of the entire state's population. To better understand how hazards affect communities, it is important to understand who our stakeholders are. Take, for example, Disneyland. Who are the stakeholders for emergency planning at Disneyland? Certainly, our direct stakeholders are our managers and coworkers. But there are many more stakeholders to consider. The guests are our most important stakeholder as their safety is priority number one. But there are also proximity stakeholders. These are stakeholders who may not necessarily have a direct hand in the creation of the plan, but they are certainly affected by it. These include government officials, first responders, and business owners surrounding Disney's properties. As we identify more stakeholders, it is important to utilize our resources, including the Office of Emergency Management and its meeting topics. This is a great way to set expectations, establish formal communication lines, establish structure, including setting up a formal chain of command of leadership, and working together to define common goals, hazards, and risks. Another question is, should the meeting be formal or informal? There are advantages and disadvantages to both that could set the precedent for future meetings. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, ESFs are groupings of governmental and certain private sector capabilities, grouping them into organizational structure to provide support, resources, program implementation, and services that are most likely needed to save lives, protect property and the environment, restore essential services and critical infrastructure, and help victims and communities return to normal following domestic incidents. In the construction industry, every ESF is important. My organization utilizes many resources, especially because it is in construction. There are many public resources my company has to work in conjunction with in order to be able to do its work. Early planning is important in assessing this list that separate functional, support, emergency phase, or agency-focused annexes. Some organizations will need to pay special attention to certain functions and may even exclude some depending on the needs of the organization. Once the basic plan has been developed, then each jurisdiction can further be developed with definitions and supporting annexes. At Disney, the most important ESFs are ESF 4, 6, 8, and 13. These are the most important ones to Disney because guest safety is the number one value we hold dear. Because Disney properties are known for being safe and family oriented, they have to deliver on that value. The ESFs are interconnected. For example, when an emergency response is activated, then all the agencies are notified about it, just in case they need to respond. Most emergency services are intertwined by Disney. Each agency has to communicate with each other in order to coordinate responses and mitigation planning. Communication is important in general, no matter the organization or project. The level of communication becomes elevated in an emergency and is one of the most important aspects leadership can provide to all stakeholders. Communication is key in mitigating as much potential risk as possible, as well as damage after the fact. In the world of project management, emergency communication has its place and can be heavily utilized in any organization. In my organization, we hold a high standard of communication, especially in emergencies. Our values include focusing on the needs of the clients, being as transparent as possible with all stakeholders, being efficient and timely in the release of information, and understanding all sides without becoming emotional. These principles guide the very nature of the company, but are pushed further in emergencies. Without the complete trust of our clients and other stakeholders, communication breaks down and does not add value towards minimizing damage or preventing an emergency. In terms of technology, my organization uses many enterprise communication tools to improve communication. For example, we use an automated system to call, text, and email personnel if there is important information that must be communicated immediately. This system is used in many educational institutions, but my organization utilizes it for operational needs and can be used for emergencies too. In terms of social media, how do you navigate professionalism and informal dialogue? It is hard to say because the style in which you choose to disseminate information can cloud the message. If a topic is serious, then it should be communicated in a professional manner, no matter the audience. But if the information is purely for informational purposes, then the style can be different. It all depends on the topic and the audience. There are certainly many benefits of all hazard planning. According to FEMA, all hazard planning gives organizations many options in terms of how they plan for emergencies. Creating many different options allows organizations to avoid duplication that can drain important resources and focus on unique hazards. It also allows a consolidation of resources so that many agencies can pull from the same information and reduce confusion in communications. All hazard planning also allows for organizations to clearly and definitively set direction and control the efforts of different jurisdictions efficiently and effectively. Direction and control is incredibly important during an emergency as changes occur constantly in a shifting disputation which could hinder response and recover if the lines of jurisdiction are blurred. Some potential pitfalls are just how broad the strokes of planning can make it difficult for some agencies to plan accordingly. Sometimes there are already set plans for emergencies that are ingrained in many different agencies. For terrorist threats, we partner with our federal liaisons to make sure we are up to date with all the terrorist activity related to Disneyland. As well, we group together Anaheim PD and FD to make sure if emergencies occur, we know our duties and they know theirs as well. At Disneyland, there are many special groups including VIP guests, special needs guests, and foreign guests. These special groups are common at Disneyland because of the very nature of the industry. And although Disney does not keep track of special needs and the people who pass through our gates, they do keep an internal record of the accommodations for these special guests. This is how Disney determines the needs of the social populations. Disney also conducts its own research to determine what is best for special groups. This allows Disney to properly create emergency plans for any situation. One strategy to use is to look into federal guidelines on how to prepare for emergencies for special groups. The Federal Agency Management Agency has great tools and guides on how to make plans for special needs groups. FEMA has an Office of Disability Integration and Coordination that is tasked with making sure that organizations and groups have guidelines to help special needs groups. Another strategy is to utilize the Functional Needs Support Services, which supports organizations in planning, finding subject matter experts, legal advice, and personal assistance service needs. This gives special treatment to special groups who may need extra support. The FNSS also supports in the integration and coordination of services to help special groups plan for, protect against, respond to, recover from, and mitigate all hazards. Function is important because it takes away the stigma of special needs people and focuses on helping them. Privacy was a great topic that Disney does a phenomenal job of doing. I do not know if this is because of federal employment law or they are just that much more ahead of guidelines, but recognizing special needs groups and their needs and generalizing it for each specific person reduces the need to provide sensitive information, especially during an emergency. On top of that, there may not be enough time to get that information during an emergency as time is precious. Disneyland is considered within the top 10 most likely targets for terrorist organizations. This is because Disneyland is seen as an American icon. Disneyland sees tens of thousands of visitors a day, and in 2019, Disneyland saw a record 20.9 million guests for the whole year, which is about 30 to 90,000 guests per day, depending on holidays and the slow season. People trust Disneyland to be a fun and safe place for everyone. So, the pressure to have exceptional security operations is high. Disneyland is unique in that it has so publicly been threatened by terrorist organizations, yet all properties are well known for being safe. Disneyland is a global company with multiple properties around the world, including its cruise ship enterprise and tour group subsidiaries. It is important that Disney has multiple security plans that fit the different needs of each property. For example, properties in Paris will have different political issues than properties in Hong Kong or Shanghai. Or properties in Tokyo will have different geographical threats than properties in California. All of these threats, including terrorist threats, would have to be properly assessed to form a complete security plan. Workplace violence at Disney from guests are attributed to the natural stresses of travel. In turn, the guests will take it out on the cast members. Interagency cooperation is important to Disney as it works closely with many federal, state, and local agencies to ensure guest safety. We see this in its safety planning utilizing terrorist threat matrices from federal agencies to work with state agencies to ensure all of our departments and employees are within regulations, and local agencies including police, fire, and government agencies work together. On the West Coast, Disneyland has had terrorist threats before. Disneyland sees about 30 to 90,000 guests per day depending on the holidays and slow seasons. Because of this, Disneyland is seen as a prime target for terrorist organizations. Yet all the properties are well known for being extremely safe. It is incredibly important that Disney develops multiple plans that accounts for most threats and issues. This means Disney must stay up to date with current and business events that could affect the industry, including guidelines. To be honest, I don't think plans need to be updated or audited until a change to the processes have been presented or outlined. They should also not be changed until they are reviewed by some kind of change review board to ensure it does not create issues for other processes or organizations. Plans are never concrete, as they can change, but that does not mean plans should be constantly reviewed. If we did that, we would be wasting many resources. A review schedule will be important to an organization because it allows for plans to be updated with the most up-to-date information. For example, Disney is a large company that is always updating itself, and so therefore the emergency plans need to be updated constantly. But at my other organization, it is small enough that the changes it makes to its company seldom interfere with emergency plans. Now, if the company were to expand, then it would need to review the emergency plan to incorporate all entities. But changes within the organization that does not affect the emergency does not warrant the emergency plan to be reviewed. Disney prides itself on its training and teaching programs. After all, it has had close to 55 years to develop its training program. At Disney, every cast member is vital to the daily operations that make Disney successful. Because Disney has such a high standard for its hiring, the process is incredibly competitive. Disney does not hire to simply fill a position, but to invest the professional and personal development of each cast member. That is why computer-based training is so important. CBT is ongoing training that gets distributed through the employee portal. The curriculum can be easily distributed through CBT because it is a review of policies and procedures and do not require physical practice. Funding is also important to consider. Without funding, we cannot properly train personnel and organizations to effectively implement any plans. This is important to any stakeholders as planning is the most important stage of any project or plan itself. It is not often that funding is considered in the initial planning stage, as it is difficult to really budget for anything before planning is finished. But at the same time, funding is important to know just how much planning an organization can do with the limitations set by money. Cycle reviews may be more important than updates, as plans should be only updated when major updates to the company are made. Cycle reviews should only determine readiness of each stakeholder to perform their functions when an emergency occurs. Any changes should go through a change review board to ensure everyone has time to review the proposed changes and does not disrupt the functions of other organizations at the sake of updating the emergency plan. This concludes my presentation, and here are my references. Thank you for listening.